You're very welcome. Mick Rooney, investigative journalist, Radio Espial.com. If you want to join us there, or alternatively, our main channel is YouTube, Mick Rooney Radio Espial. Episode 37, great guest coming up. Usual stuff. Thank you to all our recent subscribers. You're very welcome if you're joining us for the very first time. This is our first interview in, I think it's nearly 16 months since we did an interview. We've got a great one today. You'll certainly be intrigued by our guest today. He's a photojournalist for more than 25 years for provincial, national and international media by day, and he's a paranormal investigator by night, and he's a survivalist trainer and instructor to cadets in the police and defence forces. Some people may refer to him as the Irish Bear Grylls. It's a perfect mix where Radio Espial combines our true crime features with paranormal explorers and survivalist techniques. We also demystify the mainstream belief that every trained survivalist is some kind of crazy prepper living in a log cabin in the woods, complete with 200 cans of beans in an underground concrete bunker, ready for the next zombie apocalypse. From Bray, County Wicklow, Ireland, Shayne Phelan has had a lifelong interest in survival, and someone in the field would consider him an expert and somewhat of a father figure in survival training in Ireland. He has served as a trainer and consultant for media outlets such as radio, TV, magazines and newspapers, as well as his photojournalism work for them. At an even higher level, Shayne has also taught staff from the Irish Fire Brigade, members of An Garda Síochána and the Irish Defence Forces in requirements of staying alive in the wilderness. To quote Shayne in his own words, "I guess I was practicing survival skills before I knew it was survival. Fishing, hunting, falconry and ferreting was part of daily life. I suppose the eureka moment was 1986, when as a 14-year-old I stumbled across a book just out, the SAS Survival Handbook by the legendary Lofty Wiseman. That book was devoured with the same appetite for knowledge that a survivalist would have for food after coming off an island. I started practicing shelter building and primitive firelighting techniques, even when I knew the importance of skill-based fire rather than product-based fire. Survival is a huge mental task, and I always say survival is from the neck up. But it certainly helps if everything from the neck down works well. The greatest fear I have is the trust people put in authority. You see this globally with flash floods and other disasters. Good, honest people think someone is going to come and save them, but authorities are so stretched they never come. We have a personal and family responsibility to be less passive in our chance of survival. I always preach that survival is going to happen when you aren't anticipating such scenarios. You could be just gone on a day, a hike or fishing, hunting, whatever. Shayne Phelan is a master in martial arts and teaches Hapkido and kickboxing to those that are interested in self-defense rather than the element of sport. This is how we connected martial arts to survival. He was recently promoted to a gold belt, which is a master level in Hapkido, from Grandmaster Massam Gorbani. He established Eagle Ridge Survival School, The name derives from his activities as one of the few in Ireland who flies and hunts with a golden eagle, Thor. You might hear us mention that later in the interview. Outside of his photojournalism and survival training, along with his wife Natalie, he spends many weekends videoing, photographing and documenting their paranormal investigative visits to locations across Ireland. Shayne and Natalie run Haunted Eire and continue to share and explore their experiences over many years. I could also go into talking about motorbikes and crime scenes, as we will do during this interview, and a lot more that Shayne does in his daily life. But I think maybe it's best just to get to Shayne, our guest today. So let's go to Shayne for the interview.
We're back in the car, so you probably know what that means in terms of video, what type of video it is. We were hoping to do some other paranormal stuff and maybe even a bit of metal detecting, but the date of this one dictated that we were going to do this video. So we're in Newbridge anyhow, and we're following the trail of Deirdre Jacob. Training was always my drug, and anyone that knows me, I'm involved in martial arts, heavily involved in martial arts until I was 3 years of age. And as you can see now, I'm well on into my 20s. Into my eyes, 1, 2, 3. Guys, your imagination is great, but you know what? It's so good, your imagination. It's you're seeing a little bit more light than I did on the night. Okay, so you want to pull it back a little bit. Your imagination is too good. Your place, Struther, became such a place of horrors really afterwards. And we're not surprised.
Horror for me anyway.
Yeah, and that was before the really bad things started happening.
When I was a child.
If you can hear that, there's a buzzard over there. Anyhow, there's no doubt about it, this place has some horrible stories to tell, I would imagine, you know. Imagine if we had have known about this, like, we wouldn't have to climb the wall. I don't think she was abducted by someone on foot, because here we are almost 25 years later and we still have no idea where her body is. And
okay, here he is, episode 37. Shayne Phelan, you're very welcome to Radio Espial.
Hi Mick, how are you? Thanks very much for having me on. We got here eventually. I think we've both had
we had some we had some gremlins today, yes.
Yeah, who would have thought it was Friday the 13th, eh?
Yeah, there we go. And everybody, we didn't plan this for Friday the 13th. It's just the way it happened. But there you go. The gods were shining on us. And about I think about an hour ago, there was a storm blowing here in the Netherlands, and I thought, oh my God, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to go well. But we got there.
We got there.
Shayne, as always, I'm good. You're very welcome. Like I said, you and I have been kind of planning this collaboration for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Shayne, let's just, as we do, just get straight into it. People have already heard my bio of yourself. They know the general areas that we're going to get into here. I always bring my guests, before we really get into the, as they say, the meat and potatoes of an interview, I want to bring you back to your early life and your upbringing. Am I right in saying that you're from Bray, County Wicklow, and that's where you've spent most of your life?
Yeah, that's right. I'm born and reared in Bray, County Wicklow, of course. Bray, County Wicklow, I'm not 21 anymore, I'm 51 now. So 51 years ago, Bray, County Wicklow was quite a different place to what it is now. And it was quite, I suppose for want of a better term, a very large village rather than a town. And had a lot of rural elements about it. And I suppose my mother and father, they both come from farming communities. My father's from County Laois, originally Rathdowney, and my mother, just outside of Newtown, Mount Kennedy. So I suppose I was exposed to a kind of a rural lifestyle, even though we lived in a town. I think some of the locals used to kind of call us the Beverly Hillbillies, because we lived in quite an affluent area of Bray, but yet there was always hens, ducks, geese, and donkeys knocking around the garden. Yeah, so quite an eventful upbringing. I was always at my father's heels. He died when I was quite young, but I was always, at him when he was looking after the hens, dogs, whatever we had around the place at the time, and a bit of hunting and a bit of fishing and ferreting, and that's how I grew up pretty much.
I think there isn't. I found this as well. People know me because I've done an awful lot of research in areas of South Dublin, Crumlin, Walkinstown, Tala, and I always find that people slightly younger than ourselves in the 50s, who maybe are in their 20s or 30s, don't understand the history of the places that we live and where we come from. And there are so many places in Dublin where we grew up that were quite exceptionally rural areas.
Absolutely, yeah.
That people don't grasp. I mean, I found out that people had no idea of horse races in Walkinstown. They had no idea
Yeah,
of the history of, because that's what people of the era like to do 100, 200 years ago, hunting, whether it was for ferrets, rabbits, whatever. And people don't grasp the history of the area that they live in, which I think is a little bit sad, and I'm sure you have thoughts on that.
yeah, I definitely have thoughts on that. Like, I mean, I see with a lot of people that I teach survival courses with now and bushcraft courses, and of course, it's a term that's used nowadays. But 40 years ago, the term for survival or bushcraft would have been just living, and this is how people lived. And I suppose hunting, fishing now is very much a hobby. But in our not too distant past, it was something that supplemented your life and alleviated a small income that was coming into a house as well.
In your upbringing in Bray, one of the, and we'll talk more about this later, one of the videos that struck me on a very personal basis for you was, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you visited Tudor House and
Yeah,
you went through the experience of your mother who spent time there. I
yeah.
just want you to paint a picture a little bit of that. And
So it was at the beginning of the summer. Myself and Natalie, my wife, we went and we decided to do a video for Haunted Eire on Trother House. Now, Trother House has really a very, very dark history, but my mother attended that school as a child. It wasn't far from where she lived as the crow flies. And she went to the school and she was very, very young one evening. And she explained to me that she would receive beatings on a daily basis from the nuns. And, sometimes it was for nothing at all other than the nun felt giving her a beating at the time. Now, look, we were talking about a 7 or 8 year old child. Horrendous stuff, anyhow. But there was one particular day she was, in around 7 or 8 years of age. It was in winter and she was locked in a room until she had no real concept of time, what amount of time she was locked in the room by the mother superior. But when she was let out onto the road, it was dark. And lo and behold, her father had come looking for her on horseback and he found her on the road. Now, there's no road lighting on these roads back in the day. If you can cast your mind back to imagine a little child being on the road like that in those circumstances, it's definitely like an absolute tearjerker for anyone to hear about that of their mother or an auntie or a father that would have been uh, receiving such abuse. Like,
but many people growing up in Ireland of our era and age, they talk to their parents, they talk to their, maybe particularly their grandparents, and we understand that Ireland has a darker history of, yes, of course, what we refer to as the Troubles, the conflicts north and south, everything from the famine through to the formation of the Irish state. But there's what I always call, there's a hidden Ireland of the Catholic Church, institutions, and appalling things that happened. We can reflect in recent times on Tune babies,
Oh yeah,
and it's your reflection on Ireland and its institutions.
yeah. And you know, it's interesting that you should say this, because I was only discussing this with my wife Natalie there a few weeks ago about these work homes that the Catholic religion had. And I was watching something on the TV, and it wasn't that long ago, but they always project the imagery in black and white because it distances the perpetrators in by time. You look at a black and white image, it's forever. But like I mean, as I always say, we still had workhouses functioning here in Ireland at a time when Guns N' Roses were playing in Slane. It's not, you know, a million years ago. It's not 100 years ago. We're talking right up to the early 90s. There were workhouses going, and this kind of infallibility of power in Ireland, it was bound to be abused. If you put anything on such a high pedestal, it's bound to be abused at some point in time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always left with the question, who wants to hide that? Is it the people of Ireland, or is it the people who effectively run Ireland, the government? I'm always caught between those two stones. Is it a case of, yes, is it a case of that people just want to hide their own past and their history? And I'm always fascinated with this as a local researcher, and I'm always fascinated with the idea, but are you blaming the government, or is there something deeper down within your own family that you haven't quite discovered yourself?
Yes, there is.
And there's an awful lot of that going on.
Yeah, within my family, within your family, and within everybody's family.
Everyone's, yeah.
Yeah, and it I think that effectively kept everybody in line for an awful long period of time.
Yeah.
You know, and this, like, I mean, I think personally, it's a recipe for disaster if you put any kind of system that has a lot of power and put it on a pedestal that it can never be wrong and can't be questioned. You're asking for trouble down the line. You definitely, it's because it only takes one person to abuse the trouble. And another problem that I always have with I'm non-religious, but I have nothing against any religious organizations as long as it's done for the right reasons. But the people that didn't perpetrate horrendous crimes on kids within Ireland, that were quite happy to keep quiet about it, knowing it was going on. Like, I mean, if you and I hop in a car tonight and we go and rob a bank, and you don't know I'm going in to rob a bank, but you're driving me, and then I come out and we make a getaway, you're aiding and abetting, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. There is certainly...
It's shocking the way they're able to wash their hands of it.
It's Ireland and its circle of silence is kind of what I call it.
And this is what I suppose attracted me a few months ago to your YouTube channel, because I don't like just the mainstream answers, and I don't like to be spoon-fed what I should have to think. I noticed that you stood out from all the other ones, channels that are doing mid persons and that kind of stuff, because you scratch beneath the surface. And it was very refreshing for me, because, like, having worked as a photojournalist for, well, too long, since film, having worked as a photojournalist for such a long period of time, I have seen the disintegration of quality journalism, and how slowly but surely journalists were no longer being fueled by editors, but fueled by accountants, and accountants started to run newspapers rather than editors. And it was very refreshing for me to see how much effort you put into these videos, and your
They,
timelines.
they,
It's
I, I,
fascinating.
I suppose some of those cases deserve it. Um, I was tutored by Eugene Maloney, if anybody remembers him, from the Evening Herald. And when I finished my journalism course with him, and I said, where do I go next? And I said I was unsure about going into mainstream journalism, because I wasn't comfortable with the editorial line of going in every morning and being told in meetings, these are the stories we're covering. Get lost, go out and cover them. And I wasn't into that idea. And he even suggested he suggested an editor that I go in and sit down with for an interview for a job in the Evening Herald. And I thought, Eugene, I'm not interested. I want to work independent and freelance. And from that day, that's
Yeah,
what I always did. The best thing he ever did, the one thing the lovely Eugene Maloney ever said to me was, God rest him, any day you want it, you can have my press card. Go into the forecourts and spend the next year sitting in cases and just absorb. Do nothing, say nothing, take notes, and just absorb everything that's happening there. And you will
yeah,
experience every aspect of life. You will
yeah,
experience the lonely people, the depressed, the suicidal, the murderers, the rapists. You will experience people on the extremes of life, from the bankers, the commercial people defrauding. You will experience every, and he was absolutely right. And that was the
absolutely.
formation of where I realised that formed
Yeah,
the basis of the channel that I now have.
yeah,
For you, Shayne, college education, career choices.
yeah. So,
How did Shayne Phelan end up as a photojournalist? How did that happen?
well, it happened in a very organic fashion. As I said, my father died when I was very young. I was only just heading for 11 years of age. And I suppose I found myself floundering, really, because, you know, a lot of my interests were his interests, and now they were no longer my interests. And I became fascinated with photography, still images. And I said to myself, yeah, I can make these images. And
Hmm.
it's to this day, when I take a photograph, a good photograph, I still haven't taken that image. And I don't think I ever will take that image,
The
because
image.
we're so critical of our own work anyhow.
Yes.
Um, but I realized that this is a very, very powerful tool. And I never had an interest, I suppose, of photograph and milk tray box type photography. Uh, Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, it was always the human interest. I always had that human interest, and I started delving into photography, and I started working in black and white. And lo and behold, slowly but surely, by the time I was 14, I had a dark room at home, and I was processing, developing, and even rolling my own film on. I was buying it in 100-meter rolls, and rolling it onto old canisters that I'd get out of the printing and processing shops. And I I fell in love with it, I suppose. Did I never thought it was going to happen, and it just kept happening, and it happened more and more. to the point that I really wouldn't go anywhere without a camera. And all I wanted to do ever was capture humanity and capture it in an uncontrolled fashion. And I didn't even know there was a name for that back then. I was so young. I just knew that's what I wanted to photograph. I didn't want to be in the studio taking pretty photographs. I didn't really want to be taking landscape photography either. But anyhow, I did my leaving cert and went on to college, studied photography, came out of college, and 6 months later, I worked as a security guard for a while after college. As you know yourself, it can be hard to find your niche in these kind of industries that you're very vocationally driven. And I found a job as a photographer in a newspaper. And then and only then did I realise what I'd been learning in college wasn't really practical to what I had to do, and that the majority of courses in college, definitely with stuff like photography, if you want to be a press photographer or a documentary photographer, are really taught by people that haven't been successful within the industry. So you have to find your own way now.
Yeah.
And I do remember my first day going in, and the editor said to me, he said, "I'll give you one piece of advice. He said, if you want to do well in this industry, I won't mention the newspaper." He says, "Never let the truth stand in the way of a good story." And I went out and I was handed 4 rolls of film, and I was given my markings and off I went. I really was, to be honest with you, the first day I was halfway through a roll of film and I stupidly opened the back of the camera and flared out all the photographs because I was panicking that much. Now, this is someone that has been doing photography for years
Yeah.
and years and years at this stage, but it was just, it was so much to try and embrace in a very, very short period of time. So I kind of worked along those routes for a couple of years then, and slowly but surely, the value of photographers started to be disintegrated because we were at the kind of the cusp of digital photography at that stage. And of course, as soon as that came out, everyone was a photographer now. And, you didn't have to invest time, and I suppose you could review your image and you knew before you left whether you had the image or not. Whereas we had to have the knowledge that we had it in the back of the camera before, when we were still working in film. So I fell out of, I suppose, conventional photography in terms of I stopped being a staff photographer. I found that it was too much for me, and there was only particular types of things that I wanted to work on. And I also found that found myself photographing certain elements of human trauma throughout, every shift as you do as a photojournalist. But it only became an image now. I wasn't personally involved in it, and I wasn't psychologically involved in it. It was just a photo, and I didn't like that, so I went freelance after that. Then, and I've been freelance ever since. I like to control my images, and I like to control what I choose to photograph and how it is photographed as well.
Essentially, you made then, after your initial experience and career, a life choice. And
Yeah.
that kind of takes me, because I want to get to know Shayne Phelan a little bit more. And I'm not asking you to go into personal, stuff, but this is really about because this kind of transforms into a little bit more of what also happened in your later life as regards the being a survivalist, the physical training, and what took you into that in the sense of a spiritual or a belief system that got you, like, was that always there, or was that something that developed?
Yeah, it was certainly always there. And I started my pursuit in martial arts at about 4 years of age, and that never stopped. And we've already established I'm not quite 21 anymore.
No.
So that never stopped. So that was a kind of a constant in my life. And I suppose and of course the survival, although I didn't really know that's what I was doing then, or at least that's what I was preparing myself for down the road. But yes, you're quite right insofar as the survival that I teach is very spiritually based, because I don't believe in this Rambo type survival education. That's not, if I say to people, if they're coming expecting Rambo, they've come to the wrong place. And everything with me when I'm teaching survival is about moving at the pulse of nature, because we are our everything. So if something happens to us, we have to rescue ourselves. There are no blue lights coming to save us. And there's definitely a situation regarding civilization now that people, and this has really happened in the last 20 years, I think, anyhow. This is my observations. No one is responsible for anything anymore. No matter what happens or goes wrong
Nope.
in your life, there is
No.
somebody to blame.
Yeah.
And I bring people on course and I'm trying to teach them, no, you're entirely responsible now. So the responsibility lies entirely with yourself. You are your own blue lights now. So whatever happens, you have to get yourself out of it. And it's far less likely to happen if you move at a slow, considerate pace. You have to give, everything has to be given a lot of consideration, and always ask yourself, what are the consequences? And it's practical survival. And then the problem is, we've had a lot of TV shows, and I won't, like, obviously I won't mention any names, but a lot of TV shows now have presented and projected survival like some sort of adventure sport.
Mm.
And I say that these aren't survivalists, they're adventure actors. They're not really giving people education, and that's very dangerous, because somebody could be watching there and going, you know what, it's actually a really good idea to jump off this cliff into the pond, and I don't know how deep it is, and I don't know if I'm going to get impaled. And it's a perfectly good idea to throw a set of skis away, and all this kind of rubbish, because it's sensational for the TV. And I suppose this is an effect that you see throughout society now. Um, you know, Back in the day, you go to see a concert, and people would be appreciating that concert. Maybe their lighters might go up in the air at the end, but now when you go to a concert, if you stand at the back, all you see is a sea
Of
of
cameras.
cameras.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not experiencing the
We
moment. They're
we
already.
yeah, we live in a world where we view that world through a screen. We're
Yeah,
putting the screen in front of the world we live in.
yeah, yeah. And this is all done for likes and clicks and some sort of ego boost, which you know I think is partly very sad. It's sad for people to live life like that, because people. Do you know what I find when people come on courses with me nowadays? You ask them what do they like to do, and they don't actually know.
Mm.
People don't know what they like to do anymore,
People are
because they're.
lost. They're somewhat
Yeah,
lost.
really. I really do believe that. Yeah, I genuinely do believe that they're lost, and they
Tell
don't.
me,
And
tell me the best experience you've ever had, because you go into the we're talking about people now and how they form views and where they end up. We've talked a little bit about me. We've talked much about your upbringing. I am fascinated as to your experiences, because you've had this. And it's a captured audience. You have walked into, because of your role in life as a photojournalist or survivalist, your paranormal stuff. We'll talk about that later. That's a separate bit of this interview. I want you to talk about the first time you ever walked into a classroom of children.
okay, well, like this is something that I'm really, really passionate about, is taking kids, and maybe kids that are being brought up and they're not around nature, and experiencing and displaying nature to these kids, that they can experience it and understand, like it, that we are part of nature. It's not a separate thing. We actually are nature. We've just chosen to remove ourselves from it and live in a concrete jungle. But when you experience nature and you see a kid for the first time, understanding that they are part of this, and sometimes I went to schools. I keep birds of prey as well and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, and I bring owls in for kids to see, and and give them a talk about nature. And I'm always pushing the love for nature. teach people how to love nature. And I think, and without going down a whole
Mm-hmm.
hippy dippy route, because I'm not that person either, but if you can, we don't have to worry about saving the planet. What we have to worry about is saving ourselves. And I just think that we get this constant Green Party, no matter what country they're in, pushing this save the planet, save the planet, save the planet. I say no, not to that, because it's too strict, and it's too condescending. Go to your kids and teach them to love nature.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is to teach them to love nature, and the planet doesn't need to be saved. Everything will work out fine. It's as simple as that. Teach them how to love and be in nature. It saddens me to think that we are the only species on the face of this earth that can't survive in our natural environment. We can't do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that old adage as well, that of course we must observe nature and the environment that we live in, but believe me, Homo sapiens and all creatures in this world, they come upon it, they live and they die and they pass on, and that's the end of their existence. And believe me, this planet will live a lot longer than the people currently on it at this time. And I don't think we quite, I think we're somewhat living in a narrow window of time, and we forget how recent we are on this planet.
I couldn't agree with you more.
But
And
but but by Christ, we're making our impact both
yeah,
positively and sadly negatively on it.
yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's the, I suppose it's the natural egotistical drive
Mm,
of humans, and I think if people can get over themselves and realize that the most important thing on the face of this earth isn't an iPhone, and the realization that nature, as I always say, anytime that I've gone to visit anyone in a hospice, it is always surrounded by nature. They try and recreate nature
absolutely,
within that
yeah. I've seen
hospice.
that. Yeah, I've seen that with my dad. Yeah, yeah.
And I believe that once mankind is removed from nature, we become cold, hard, and callous,
Mm.
because it is not our environment. And uh, I definitely believe that one of the greatest things we can do to society is to reignite a passion for nature in people. And this realization that it's okay to enjoy something without getting a like or a click, or you don't have to be that person.
Shayne, we're going to take a short break in about 7 or 8 minutes
Okay.
to give us a rest. But in between that, I said I was going to do this in the interview. Um, we and this is moving on in a wider sphere. Um, you want to empower people not to expect that blue light. That when you
Yeah.
do silly things and you don't think through a scenario, you need help. And
Yeah.
your business is about, and your survivalist training is about, it's not just about teaching the Irish Army or the Gardaí or cadets, are about, surviving in the jungle, because most of us don't need to go through that experience. But what we
No,
do
we
is
don't.
we go on walks in the forest.
Yeah.
We jump in our sailing ship on a beautiful summer afternoon, and we sail out on the west or east coast of Ireland, and we go, shit, the weather's not quite as good as I thought it was. And it's about being unprepared.
Yeah.
I want to give,
And
I just want to give you this scenario just before we finish up this section. And I, I know the audience isn't going to be necessarily into all the aspects we talk about here, but the scenario is one person, they go out on a hitchhiking, and we've seen this all. Somebody goes out on a hitchhiking trip, they climb cliffs, uh, whatever, whatever their pursuit is, and they get themselves into trouble. whether they're lost in a forest or whatever.
Yeah.
If somebody, an ordinary person listening to this program now, finds themselves in difficulty with fading light in circumstances where they go, oh shit, I've got myself into trouble here and I may need help. They might have the phone with them, they might not.
Yeah.
But you can't just rely on that, because guess what? It might take a while for the emergency service to get to you.
Yeah.
What's your most
Okay, so
basic tips?
there's a couple of things that I do that if people come to my courses, they might preempt this situation in the first place. But
Preemption. Be
to me,
Roy Keane, be prepared or prepare to fail.
yeah. Well, actually, it's funny you should say that. But the slogan of my company, and here's I don't know if you can see this, but it's on my knife handle. It says "Fail to prepare." It's engraved, and I don't know if you can see it. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Yeah.
And that's the adage of my company. And what I say to people is, be a good journalist before you go anywhere, and I always tell them who, what, where, when, and why before you leave. So you leave that flow plan, so that as soon as you go missing, you don't return at the time that you should. People know something is up, and then all you have to do is hug a tree. But let's say and wait. But let's say you didn't do that. Well, the first thing that I would recommend for someone, and you may not have good cellular coverage or whatever, and the battery could be gone on your phone. Because what do we do when we go into the forest? We decide to take 400 photographs of the bluebell and waste the battery of our phone. So what you do is you get onto your voicemail, you explain your situation, and you explain your location. And it doesn't matter now if your phone dies. As soon as someone rings you, that is your voicemail.
You're recording it.
High. Yeah, it's hi. Instead of "Hi Shayne here, sorry I can't make your call," it's "Hi Shayne here. I'm at the Roundwood Lakes. I think I've broken my leg and I've no coat." And at least now they have a really, really good starting point to try and find you. Now, if all of this doesn't work, and the thing about it is with Ireland, believe it or not, Ireland or the UK, the temperature signature that we have here is what's known as the land of hypothermia. People will die of hypothermia in Ireland very, very quickly. They say that hypothermia statistically most happens at about 7 degrees Celsius. And you might go, that's not very cold. And no, it's not. And that's the reason why it happens. It's not cold enough to make sure you don't go out without a coat, but it's cold enough to kill you should you become sedentary. So this is a shocking statistic. If you could imagine our naked sedentary body, that we can't move, we've no clothing, or effectively, worse again, all our clothing is wet through because we're now losing our heat signature 5 times faster than we would if we were just naked and dry. Our body can only maintain 37 degrees Celsius, which is what our core temperature should be, at an ambient temperature of 23 degrees Celsius. Now, 23 degrees is quite a nice day in the summer. So it's when you realize this statistic, you realize how vulnerable we are as a biological system. And it's very, very easy to die. So we need to keep, the first thing we need to look at is to stave off hypothermia. And our first line of defense is our clothing. So what I say to everybody, before you go on that hike, before you go on that mountain bike or canoeing or whatever, fly fishing, whatever you like to do, whatever brings you into the wilderness in a pursuit, that's what's going to likely cause a survival scenario. And it's just like every other day that you've gone doing this until it's not like every other day. So we bring clothing that can keep us going in the worst that the weather can statistically throw at us in the next 72 hours. So my recommendation for anyone in Ireland is just a cheap poncho. Failing that, 3 or 4 bin bags. They'll keep you alive, believe it or not. You stick your head through them and they're going to keep you dry. Once we can stay dry, we can do press-ups or whatever just to keep our core temperature up until we're rescued. Statistically, we know that when someone goes missing, the rescue is usually resolved within 72 hours. That doesn't mean it's going to be resolved in a good way, but statistically, either somebody that needs rescue is found alive or somebody is found dead. But that's what statistically happens.
Thank you, Shayne. And just the last, because I know you've mentioned this several times as well in some of your survivalist videos. A Zippo lighter is the greatest thing for a smoker out in the wilds of the day. but guess what? That ain't gonna light a fire over tinders when you need heat and
Question.
survival,
Yeah,
because it will burn the fucking hands off you after a minute.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
So
you
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 like
need to understand how to light a fire.
you do. You do. I'm pretty sure that you could put me on anywhere on the face of this earth, and I will achieve a fire, a viable fire within a short period of time. With this, but like you said, it can be, and in certain bad circumstances on the side of a mountain, it can be difficult enough to manage to light a cigarette with a lighter. Never mind a fire. So you do need training, and the training, it's not enough to read how to do it. You need the feel.
Okay, well, back with Shayne. Um, Shayne, uh, I want to know a little bit more about your day to day life. Like I said, I do things other than life in just being a journalist and a YouTube broadcaster, and I'm sure you do. I want to
Absolutely.
know a little bit more about. And by the way, I should ask you, how's Thor?
Oh, he's good.
By the
Yeah,
by the
good.
by the way, for people, Thor is an eagle, and Shayne is one of the. Am I right in saying one of the few people who keep an eagle in
Yeah,
Ireland and
yeah,
really know the thoroughness of it? Yeah.
yeah. Like it's quite a well. I'm flying birds of prey, as we call it, the art of falconry. But
Mm.
it's not just falcons. It includes hawks, buzzards, and of course eagles as well, and not just falcons. But I'm doing that since I was a child. I don't really remember not doing it, to be honest with you. But when you start handling an eagle, it's a completely different ball game, and you have your work cut out for you. There's no doubt about that. So like my daily basis, on a daily basis, and this I suppose another reason why I can't really fit into, say, a staff photographer's job or whatever. I need a lot of free time because I have a
Mm.
lot of personal training to do every day as well. In my pursuit of martial arts, I have my birds of prey, and I have survival training that I have to train myself every day, or else I can't. I always say that you can only teach someone a few levels below your own level. So if I'm not constantly keeping my levels sharp,
Right.
I
Yeah.
can't teach other people, and it wouldn't be fair, given that the survival education could be a very serious matter if someone should find themselves in a situation that they need to use it. So my daily routine, I get my own personal training out of the way. I always say get my stuff done first thing in the morning, and then I'm available for whatever comes. So it could be anything, any kind of a freelance photography job. The way I work now is I don't take markings. I go and try and find news, and then I sell photographs and send them on to mostly the red tops. That's what I do mostly, red top sensational type stuff if I can come across it. And I suppose as a photographer, early on, I found myself kind of doing a lot of gangland stuff and that kind of stuff. And then the occasional crime thing, where someone's gone missing or a murder or something like that. And this is where my interest stemmed, I suppose, in missing persons and that unsolved murders, because I realized that, with a lot of newspapers, these things are terrible things that happen to families, and I, they sadden me so much. But the sad thing is, for a very, very short glimpse of time, it's just a story and it's just something for attention.
It's gone. It's gone after that. That's it. It just disappears.
Yeah,
But it doesn't
yeah,
disappear for the families. They live it
no,
month in, month out.
no. And I think that made me especially interested in that field because, my God, these horrendous cases, and you become so forgotten so quickly. And I suppose with doing some of the Haunted Area Collective, where we do cover certain missing person cases and stuff like that, it's to try and make the forgotten unforgotten, I suppose, for want
Yeah,
of a better word.
absolutely. Um, Shayne, I have to talk to. Obviously, we're in a difficult area. I cover crime You cover true crime as well. I just want to talk about cases that you got, because on occasion you might be called upon by the Gardaí or whoever, or as you say, a red top, to go and say, Shayne, this has just happened. Go in there.
Yeah.
We need a picture. By Christ, we need a picture by 7 p.m. this evening because we need it for the front page or whatever. What are the cases that, because I know that with Haunted Eire Collective, you initially started it off with dealing with the paranormal, and don't worry,
Yeah.
folks who are hanging on, we are going to talk about that shortly. But you've introduced that a little bit more into your channel. Firstly, why did you do that? And secondly, what are the cases that stick out in your mind that you've had experience of?
Yeah, so I suppose why did we do that? For me, I just can't accept that these people can be forgotten,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't accept that like I mean, I always try and put myself in the boots of the poor family that's left to grieve, and I feel that if you want to be a good photographer. And I've never been a journalist. I've never worked as a journalist. I've worked with a lot of journalists, but I also feel if you want to be a good journalist, you have to be able to put yourselves in these people's situation, and then and only then, if you don't have that empathy, you can't write a heartfelt story or you can't take a heartfelt photograph. And I truly believe that. And the thing with me, I suppose it became as I had children. I think these circumstances even affected me even more as you rear your own kids and you realize only then, I suppose, only when you have a kid can you realize how good your own parents were as well. And also, only when you have your own kids can you realize how precious a child is. Like, I mean, there's nothing like it on the face of this earth. And I, I, I don't know if you've seen the video that we did on Renee Murray, but when I went into that
I did.
laneway,
Yeah.
uh, I found it very hard. I'm actually almost welling up a little bit here thinking about it because it's I have a daughter close to her age now, and I can't understand how, and I can't understand how that family must feel now because I'm only trying to project my thoughts on how they feel now, and I'm sure they feel 100 times worse than I could imagine or you could imagine.
Mm.
And I don't want these people to be forgotten. And you pointed out in one of the videos that we did that there's a certain period of time that when it elapses, if that goes, it's not going to be solved. There is a period of time, and when you get past 25, 30 years, it's very, very difficult to solve cases because people that worked on the cases could have expired and blah blah blah, and it just becomes very, very difficult. And I always believe that um, these cases are solvable. I really do believe that, and I just, I think I'm not pointing fingers at absolutely anybody now, but there's always a gross amount of mismanagement with cases like that, and it's across the board, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We won't go because this isn't the place here to go into
No,
it. Um, and we're not being critical, but I've in recent times the Nora Sheehan case that was resolved, and of course anybody and thank you to all the subscribers and the recent people visiting the channel and Shayne's channel. Yeah, we're very much focused on recent times of the Tina Satchwell case. We're both
yeah,
following that very closely, and yeah, there's an example of a case that even after 6 years looks like there's going to be very significant resolution to the family. Shayne,
yeah, look,
sorry, finish your point.
yeah. I, I, I photographed on that case as well, and I'm just so happy to see that there's looks like there's going to be some sort of resolve in that case. Anyhow, at least the circumstances can be put to bed, and her close family can somehow deal with it.
And that's what we all want, particularly when we're focused on these cases. Shayne, it's that time. It's Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
People may not know that I've always had a fascination with the paranormal and odd, weird things. In fact, when I was 18 or 19, just before I moved to the UK, and in the UK, and when I came back in my early 20s, I spent quite a considerable time travelling around Ireland, covering UFO cases and a little bit of the paranormal as a sort of field investigator. How did Shayne Phelan, as a photojournalist, end up involved in the paranormal?
Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning. My wife Natalie has always had a huge fascination with the paranormal throughout her whole life, and she got the opportunity to join a particular paranormal team. And I think Shayne got kind of shoehorned into it because I think at the time the team kind of needed somebody to fulfill the duties of security detail for late at night. And a survivalist martial arts instructor kind of seemed to fit the bill. So Shayne became a paranormal investigator. Now, that's not to say I never had an interest in it. You know what? I have been a photojournalist, and I'm sure you can identify with this as being an investigative journalist. We always want to delve and investigate. It's in our nature. We can't help it. And this was an opportunity. And I was also very, very interested in the psychology and the dynamic of paranormal investigators. And it has its own, it has its own little system going there. So I became a paranormal investigator. And of course, being a photographer and a professional photographer is a distinct advantage.
Particularly at night.
Yeah, for any paranormal investigator. So off we went paranormal investigating. Now, am I a skeptic? Yes, I am. But then, and I'm sure you being an investigative journalist, you're skeptic too, and skeptic of everything. That's not to say I'm a cynic. There's quite a difference between a cynic and a skeptic. If I hear a noise on the stairs, I want to go and investigate the stairs. I don't want to write it down as being paranormal. What could that have been? So we question everything, or certainly I will always question everything because I believe if it's true, it'll stand up to the questioning, won't it?
Yeah, when you and Nat are on a location and an investigation, and I only thought of this today. I thought this is quirky, and it always comes across in your content pieces. But I kind of consider you the Mulder and Scully, but the male and female is reversed around.
Okay.
In that you play the role of the Scully skeptic, and Nat plays the role of the Mulder, and there's always that poke and at each other, which is lovely to see between a couple, and that's both the charm and the interest of what you do.
And I think it's a good.
It isn't just everybody running, because we see so many channels who do this paranormal stuff, and you go,
"Oh,
this is fucking garbage."
Don't get me started on that, Mick. Just do not get me started on that, because this show will run on for about 10 hours. And to be honest with you, my philosophies on it, and I'm not saying that I'm right, but they're my philosophies. But one thing we do know through science, that energy cannot be destroyed; it's just there. So when we die, I feel that the energy that we have within our body leaves our body, and I don't know Yeah, I don't know what vehicle it decides to use then afterwards, but we're just a vehicle, and this vehicle ceases to be a service to that energy. But what I do believe is, and I genuinely do believe that there are talented psychics out there. I genuinely do. But here's the thing, and I've always said this. I would say, now there's no statistics to support this. This is just my opinions. But I would say, statistically, there are probably more billionaires in the world than there are truly gifted psychics.
Absolutely. And I see this with, there are so many cases. I saw
Yeah,
this with the Bernadette Connolly case. I saw this with the Ezra Eire case. There are so many families where a case goes on so long, they become so desperate, they will listen to anybody, and then it's like, oh wow, the psychics come in,
yeah.
and
And
I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it.
no, but
It's
it could
like
have a negative impact on the case.
that's the problem. It can seriously compromise, and not only that, in a practical sense, it
Mm,
can, because every line of inquiry has to be followed up. It can
yeah,
consume precious time and resources.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. I,
we've seen that with recently with the Tina Satchwell case.
yeah,
Look, you know, like,
yeah,
hello everybody. That case only ramped up because several weeks ago it was upgraded to a
yeah,
murder, and when that happens, there are massive resources and finance that come
yeah,
into that case that don't exist in an awful lot of other cases. And
yeah,
if you're getting lost in tangents of, oh, go and look in the woods or go and look in that
yeah,
river, you
yeah.
go off,
And
and
they have to be followed up.
they have to be followed up, because somebody
Yeah,
will come along and go, oh, she was found in the river, but
yeah,
you didn't listen to that psychic, and
yeah.
it's your own fault,
Uh,
and it's like,
yeah.
oh my god, yeah.
And like I said, so if we work on the statistic that there are, say, more billionaires in society than there are truly gifted psychics, look at how many paranormal teams there are out there. They all have a gifted psychic on the team, yet not one of them has a billionaire on the team.
Yeah, yeah,
It makes sense when you
yeah,
think about it.
yeah.
You know,
I think that it wasn't there. Isn't there a recent? Is it an Irish produced program with Vogue Williams involved in it,
oh
and
yeah,
with two
yeah.
or three, and I haven't seen it, so I make no judgments. I don't know. Have you seen it?
Yeah, well, I've seen one or two of the episodes.
Mm,
Uh, Now, when I say I've seen it, Natalie had the television on, and I was kind of watching it
yeah,
bit by bit with one eye, and then I was probably back into a book or something like that, or
yeah,
reviewing something else, because I don't take those type of programs with a grain of salt. I take them with a good large shovel of salt, because my thinking on it is, and I always say that maybe paranormal teams that get TV shows are similar to politicians that start out, and politicians starting out are all very, very well
they're
intended.
lovely people, meaning the
Yeah.
best. Yeah,
And then they get to the level of councillor, and they've done a few favours and they owe a few favours, and now before you know it, they're a TD, and all their good intentions are gone out the window now because they owe hundreds of favours. And I don't see paranormal TV shows being much difference, insofar as I think that how many TV shows would get renewed if nothing happened on a show. And that's the reality of a lot of paranormal investigations. Nothing happens.
when you go on a location site, whether it's Leap Castle, Leslie Castle, the Hellfire Club, um, what what equipment are you bringing? I've heard an awful lot about the equipment that you bring, and
Okay.
is it reasonable, or how reliable is it, or
Look,
do you show again that Shayne
I,
cynical eye as to whether these are really reliable? You know, I'd rather take photographs. The camera never lies, but that RMF,
I,
or that, those balls, shiny balls, looking for a pulse. Um,
well, I'm about to piddle on everybody's parade now, and probably become the most hated man in paranormal investigating.
go
But
on, sure.
uh, um, I might as well. I'm hated everywhere else. But anyhow, uh, I believe that they use a device called a K2, and you may have seen it. It
I
lights up
know
like,
the
yeah.
K2 with the lights, yeah.
Okay. Now, this sign, as somebody told me once, it's a scientific piece of equipment that measures electromagnetic field
Frequency, yeah.
in a scientific manner.
Mm.
And when I asked what metric that was, I couldn't be told. So effectively, it's just something that lights up.
Yeah.
Now, I've conducted my own test with this without going to a paranormal place, just leaving it in a field, and it does intermittently light up. And my wife actually noticed last week, even the ticking of an analog watch can set it off.
Mm.
So I'm not big on gadgets. And here's another one. They use this device, PSB box, and you're going to be surprised with this one, right? It randomly goes through AM and FM
Yeah,
frequencies,
I've seen it.
and
This is like a voice box that
yeah, and it actually finds
supposedly.
words. Could you believe that? It actually finds words when it scans through AM and
Yeah,
FM
but
frequencies.
that always struck me, and so many paranormal investigators use it, and I thought, but hang on, this is like getting an old, as we call it in Ireland, an old wireless radio and flicking on the knob very quickly through all the channels and picking up words and then trying to construct something from them.
Exactly. I always say it's akin to flicking through a dictionary and stopping on a page, and lo and behold, you find a word.
Yeah,
Who'd have thought it?
yeah.
But so yeah, I'm a little bit cynical about these kind of devices. But what I'm not cynical about is using my cameras. And on most investigations, if we do private investigations in a house where people think something might be going on, I will photograph in digital camera, but I will also take the same image in a film camera,
Mm.
so that there be some sort of cross corroboration if we do capture something. And we also record EVPs through a recorder, because this is stuff that you can stand up. My thinking on it is, like any kind of a case that you're investigating, if you can't stand it up with proper hard evidence,
Mm.
it's not worth the effort. And they're toys. And these toys, lo and behold, have become so much more famous since the birth of paranormal TV.
I'm gonna challenge you here, and maybe we can do an insert during when I do the post production. Have you ever had a photograph that you've taken on an investigation, and you've looked at it and said, I was the cameraman behind that, and what the camera picked up, I cannot explain that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I've captured a couple of anomalies, all right,
Mm.
and then when I went through them, and really reviewed them,
You can explain
I
them,
could
yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Now, like, I mean, I always say to people, a lot of people contact us about private cases, or I've seen this, or I've photographed that.
Mm.
Now, when I ask people to send me a raw file and email it to me so I can analyze that, all of a sudden the file disappears. They can't
Yeah.
send it. And this is a thing why I like to take my photographs in accordance with film camera, because
Mm.
my thinking is, if I capture something on digital and I photograph the same image in film and it appears in a negative as well,
You've
well,
got
now I
two
have
collaboration
yeah, yeah.
devices, yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I want to do, to be just and fair about it. Like, I mean, I think that a lot of paranormal investigators have convinced themselves that there is a paranormal existence. And I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm just saying I go in with an open mind. I don't even go into places with a large knowledge of the history of it, because why should I?
Mm.
I treat it like any other investigation that should be treated. You go in and you gather whatever evidence is there, and you base your opinion on the evidence that you can capture. And like, realistically, there's not a lot of evidence gathered like that. And am I saying that there's no such thing as the paranormal world? No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is, a lot of people that get into paranormal investigating have themselves convinced so much
They go
that they
in.
won't.
They go in with a closed mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a very, a closed mind, either side of the spectrum is a bad thing. I go in with an open mind. Let the evidence bring itself forward. And if it's good evidence, it'll stand up. If not, it won't. And if it doesn't stand up, it's not good evidence.
Shayne, as we move towards the end of this interview, travels, experience, and your own development in life, where are you going? What would you like to do?
Where am I going? What would I like to do? Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to do. I haven't traveled extensively, and that's something that I would like to do because I have a great interest in human cultures, and I just think that travel is such a great education, and I think maybe if people were more widely traveled, there'd probably be less war in the world. When we realize that no matter where we are and whatever part of this earth that we call home, that we're all pretty much doing the same thing, trying to get by and trying to look after a family or whatever. And I just think that that would be something that I'd like to do on photograph. But I think long term in the future, I probably see myself in a forest, uh, um, in a forest, probably living in a teepee and teaching people to survive. What I can say to you is, if I won the lottery tomorrow morning and I didn't have to work, that I would be teaching survival and bushcraft free of charge, whoever wanted to learn it. And I would buy a forest, and that would be something that I would be very much inclined to do.
but
So,
but
you know,
you wouldn't have an underground concrete bunker with 200
no,
tins
no,
of beans, because that's
no,
not
no,
the way to survive. I think you had
that's
a
not.
great description in an interview a while back. I can't. Maybe you can remind me of it. And it was that idea that survival is not about quantity; it's about quality of understanding your existence and your survival.
Yeah. Yeah, and what we need on a biological level, and what we need on a spiritual level, and what we need on a psychological. And once we can kind of figure those things out, so I suppose ultimately, uh, my long-term goal is to learn to be happier with less.
And I think on this occasion, that's probably a great line to finish with. Shayne Phelan, uh, survivalist, photographer, and all things extraordinary. They call you the Irish Bear Grylls.
Yeah, or another one that I've been called
What's
is,
that?
is Bray Mears.
Who is it? Sorry, who?
Bray Mears.
Bray Mears. Shayne, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I wish you well, and I'm gonna hold you up in that invitation, whether it happens in December when I'm back in Ireland, that we do a location visit or not. But sometime in the future, I think people can expect us to see both of us on camera together, and I'm looking forward to that.
That would be fantastic, Mick. And I'd just like to say before I go, thanks very much for having me on. And I would just like to say I really do appreciate the videos that you put up. And, coming from a kind of a parallel career, I understand the amount of work that you put into them, and I really do appreciate it.
It's a huge amount of work.
Yeah, it's a huge volume.
Shayne, take care. We'll
Thanks
see
very
each
much.
other again soon.
Take care, guys. Thank you.